Marcus had called me on a Tuesday afternoon. He'd asked if we could meet for coffee. When we sat down, he asked me for $60,000. He said his business was expanding and he needed capital for a big opportunity. My brother didn't yell. He didn't slam the table or throw accusations wildly. Marcus just stood up during Sunday dinner, connected his phone to the TV screen, and said in the calmest voice I'd ever heard, "I think he deserves to see who he married." Screenshots flooded the screen. Emails where Claire supposedly called me, predictable and easy to manage. A bank transfer labeled Exit Fund, final payment. Text messages about leaving once everything clears through. I watched my wife's face drain of every bit of color. "That's not real," she whispered, her voice breaking. "None of that is real." My mother started crying immediately. My father looked at me like I was already divorced, like I was the fool everyone had warned him about. The room felt smaller with each passing second. Then Marcus delivered what felt like the final blade straight through my chest. "She's been planning this for months, man. I had to tell you." My parents told her to leave the house. They said she needed to go until things cooled down. And I, Stellan, frozen in humiliation and overwhelmed by the evidence on that screen, let it happen. Claire walked out the front door without looking back at me once. 3 hours later, my brother was dead. The note was short. Way too short for someone who supposedly cared so much about protecting me. I did what I had to do. I couldn't watch him be destroyed. Destroyed by who? Everyone in my family assumed the same answer immediately. They all thought Marcus meant Claire, that she was the destroyer, and he'd saved me just in time. At the funeral, relatives hugged my parents tightly. They whispered comforting words about Marcus being a hero who loved his family. No one hugged Claire. No one even looked at her. She stood at the back of the church, tears streaming down her face, while people shot her angry glances. By nightfall, I had lost my brother to suicide and lost my wife to suspicion. The two most important relationships in my life were shattered. People posted tributes online calling Marcus brave. My phone buzzed constantly with messages asking if I was okay, if Claire had really been planning to leave, if Marcus had saved me from financial ruin. Relatives called me Stellan in sympathetic tones, like the name itself carried grief. But something felt wrong. The more I replayed that dinner in my mind, frame by frame, the more something felt carefully staged rather than spontaneously discovered. Grief is supposed to be messy, raw, uncontrolled. I know because that's how I felt after Marcus died. But at dinner, my brother had been completely calm, controlled, prepared. He hadn't stumbled through his accusations or seemed emotional at all. He'd been almost businesslike about destroying my marriage. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about small details. He had brought an HDMI adapter to a casual family dinner. Who brings presentation equipment to their parents' house for Sunday dinner? Who prepares like that? Then I remembered something tiny that my brain had registered, but not processed in the chaos. One of the screenshots he'd shown. The timestamp on the email. It didn't match the date format Claire's email provider used. I'd seen her emails 1,000 times. They looked different. I sat up in bed at 3 in the morning, my heart pounding. I grabbed my laptop and pulled up the photos people had taken during dinner. Someone had captured the TV screen. I zoomed in on the bank transfer screenshot. There was a formatting error in the account number. A small one, but it was there. My name is Stellan, and something in my gut told me that tiny error was about to change everything. The next morning, Claire finally agreed to meet me. We sat in a coffee shop far from our neighborhood, where no one knew us. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept in days. Her eyes were red and swollen. "Show me your real bank statements," I said quietly. "All of them from the past 6 months." She pulled them up on her phone without hesitation. Her hands shook as she handed me the device. I compared her actual account numbers to the screenshot from Marcus's presentation. The transfer number my brother had displayed was off by 1 digit. Just 1 single digit different. That's not a typo you make when you're exposing real evidence. That's fabrication. That's someone creating a fake document and making a small mistake. My chest tightened. I felt like I couldn't breathe. If that bank transfer was fake, then what else was manufactured? What else had Marcus built from nothing? I didn't send those emails, Claire whispered. I never called you predictable. I never planned to leave. I don't understand why he did this. I looked at my wife, really looked at her, and realized I'd failed her. I'd let her walk out based on evidence I never questioned. I need to check something, I said. Stella needs to fix this. Kyle was my college roommate who now worked as a cybersecurity analyst for a major tech company. I trusted him completely. I sent him the photos of the screenshots from Marcus's presentation. He called me back within 2 hours. Stellan, can you come to my office right now? I drove there immediately. Kyle looked serious as he pulled up his analysis on 3 different monitors. These screenshots weren't taken from any email system, he said quietly. They were generated, created from scratch. What do you mean created? Someone used image editing software to make these. Look at the metadata embedded in the files. He showed me technical details I barely understood. These images were generated the day before your family dinner, on a device registered to Marcus. The room went silent. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Marcus hadn't discovered Claire's betrayal. He hadn't stumbled across evidence and felt compelled to show me. He had built it, carefully, methodically, the day before he destroyed my marriage. This wasn't emotional. This wasn't a brother protecting his family. This was strategic, calculated, planned. Why would he do this, Stellan? Kyle asked. I didn't have an answer yet, but I was going to find one. I started digging through my memories, looking for anything I'd missed. Then I remembered something from 2 months before the dinner. I'd said no, politely, respectfully. I'd explained that Claire and I were saving for a house, that our finances were tight. I'd offered to help him find other investors instead. Marcus had smiled and said he understood completely. He told me not to worry, that he'd figure something else out. We finished our coffee and parted on good terms. But now I realized something. After that conversation, he'd stopped calling me as much. Our weekly check-ins became monthly. He'd grown distant. I pulled public business filings for his company. It took hours of searching through county records and business databases. What I found made my stomach drop. His company wasn't expanding. It was drowning. There were supplier disputes, loan defaults, and a pending audit from the state. Marcus hadn't been seeking opportunity money. He'd been desperate. And I, Stellan, had unknowingly become the only obstacle standing between his plan and complete collapse. The deeper I dug into Marcus's business records, the worse it became. His company had 7 active lawsuits from unpaid vendors. His business partner had filed a complaint. There were notices of default on multiple loans. He was weeks away from complete financial exposure. Maybe days. Then something clicked in my mind. If I divorced Claire, my assets would shift. I'd be emotionally shattered and vulnerable. I'd probably turn to family for support. And Marcus would be right there, ready to help his devastated younger brother, Stellan. He didn't just want Claire gone for revenge, because I'd refused his loan. He needed me unstable. He needed me desperate. He needed someone to lean on who might not ask too many questions about money. I remembered something else. A few months ago, Marcus had suggested Claire and I should keep our assets separate. He'd brought it up casually during a barbecue, saying modern marriages were smart to protect individual finances. At the time, I'd thought he was just making conversation. Now I realized he'd been planting seeds, testing ideas, building a narrative slowly over time. I pulled my phone records from my carrier. Old text messages I'd forgotten about started appearing. Messages from Marcus going back 6 months. The texts formed a pattern I hadn't seen before. Small comments that seemed innocent at the time, but now looked like careful manipulation. If Claire ever leaves, Stellan, just remember I warned you to protect yourself financially. Has she seemed distant lately? Just asking because I care. Make sure you're the primary name on all major assets. You never know what could happen. He'd been planting poison long before that Sunday dinner. It wasn't a spontaneous exposure of Claire's supposed betrayal. It was grooming. He'd been preparing me to believe his lies for months. Every seed he'd planted was designed to make that dinner more believable. When he showed those screenshots, my brain was already primed with months of subtle doubts he'd carefully inserted. I felt sick. My own brother had manipulated me slowly, methodically, like I was some kind of experiment. Then I remembered Marcus's apartment building had doorbell cameras. Residents could access footage from the main entrance. He'd given me his login information months ago when I was checking on his place while he traveled. I logged into the camera system and searched for footage from the night before the family dinner. What I found made everything worse. The timestamp read 11:47 p.m., Saturday night. Marcus stood outside his building, pacing back and forth on the sidewalk. He was alone, talking to himself. The camera had audio. I turned up the volume on my laptop. Once they see it, she'll have to go. Marcus's voice was clear in the quiet night. Dad will demand it. Mom will cry. Stellan won't fight back. He never fights back. He was rehearsing, practicing his lines, planning exactly how Sunday dinner would unfold. He knew my parents would react emotionally. He knew I would freeze under pressure. Just show them the evidence, he continued, still pacing. Stay calm. Don't get emotional. Just facts. Just show them and let them turn on her. My hands shook as I watched my brother plot my wife's humiliation. This wasn't a concerned brother protecting family. This was someone executing a carefully planned operation. I kept watching. Marcus pulled out his phone, looked at something on the screen, and nodded to himself. Tomorrow changes everything. The video ended. I sat in the darkness of my living room, trying to process what I'd just witnessed. He'd said my name during his rehearsal. He'd known exactly how I would react, and he'd used that knowledge against me. Then I remembered something else. Something about life insurance. Marcus had increased his life insurance coverage 3 weeks before the Sunday dinner. I found the policy change notification in my email. He'd listed me as the secondary beneficiary after our parents. The coverage was massive. Enough to pay off every debt his company had accumulated. Enough to wipe his financial problems completely clean. He hadn't just staged Claire's betrayal to manipulate me. He'd engineered his own martyrdom. He'd planned to become the hero who saved his brother from a terrible woman, then disappear before his fraud was exposed. The insurance payout would rescue our parents from any financial burden he created. I felt like I was piecing together a nightmare. Each new discovery made the picture darker and more calculated. But I needed more proof. I needed to know exactly what Marcus had planned. His laptop was still at his apartment. The police had released his belongings to our parents, who'd stored everything in their garage. I drove to their house while they were at their grief support group. I found Marcus's laptop in a cardboard box labeled Office Items. My hands trembled as I opened it. The password was our childhood dog's name. Stellan got in on the first try. I navigated to Marcus's documents folder and then to his trash bin. He hadn't emptied it in months. What I found there stopped my heart. 4 different versions of his suicide note. 4 drafts, each one more refined than the last. Each one polished and edited like a school essay. The first draft was raw. I can't watch my brother Stellan be destroyed by that woman anymore. The second was shorter. I did what had to be done. Someone had to protect him. The third added ambiguity. I showed him the truth. I couldn't live with staying silent. The final version, the one he actually left, was the shortest and most effective. I did what I had to do. I couldn't watch him be destroyed. This wasn't despair. This wasn't a man breaking under emotional pressure. This was scripting. He'd written and rewritten his final words like he was crafting a marketing message. The dates on the files showed he'd started writing these notes a week before the Sunday dinner. He'd planned his death before he ever confronted Claire. I felt cold all over. But something still didn't make sense. Why was Marcus so focused on destroying Claire specifically? Why her? Why stage all this elaborate deception around my wife? I needed to talk to Claire. Really talk to her about everything. We met at the house we'd shared before this nightmare started. Claire sat across from me, her arms wrapped around herself, like she was trying to hold the pieces together. I need you to tell me everything about your interactions with Marcus, I said, even things that seemed unimportant. Claire was quiet for a long moment. Then she started talking. 3 weeks before that dinner, Marcus came to my office. He said he wanted to discuss something important about family legacy. He had papers with him. A post-nuptial agreement. A post-nuptial agreement? He said it was to protect family financial interests. He wanted me to sign something limiting what I could claim if we ever divorced. He said it was standard for families with significant assets. Claire's voice was bitter. We don't have significant assets. It made no sense. What did you say? I refused. I told him that was something between you and me, Stellan, not something he should be involved in. Claire looked at me with tears in her eyes. That's when his whole tone changed. He got cold. He said I'd regret not signing. My mind raced. Marcus had tried to get Claire to sign away her rights before destroying her reputation. When she refused, he decided to remove her another way. He didn't hate you, I said slowly. He feared you. Before Claire could respond, my phone rang. Unknown number. Is this Stellan? Marcus's brother, a man's voice asked. Tyler agreed to meet me at a diner 30 minutes outside the city. He looked nervous, constantly checking over his shoulder. I heard about what happened, Tyler said quietly. I'm sorry for your loss, Stellan, but there's something you need to know about Marcus's company. What is it? They're auditing him. The state tax board. It's bad. Tyler pulled out a folder. I was Marcus's project manager until he fired me 6 weeks ago. I kept copies of everything because I knew this was coming. He spread papers across the table. Inflated invoices, fake expenses, vendor payments that never reached vendors. Marcus had been running a systematic fraud operation, stealing from his own company and hiding it in complex accounting tricks. If this gets exposed, he'd lose everything, Tyler continued. His business license, his certifications, possibly face criminal charges. But what does this have to do with my wife? Tyler looked at me carefully. A week before your Sunday dinner, Marcus asked me about creating defensive narratives. He wanted to know if something could happen in his personal life that would overshadow business problems. Something so dramatic that nobody would look at his company. My stomach turned. He needed a distraction. He needed a villain, Tyler corrected. If your wife left you suddenly, if Marcus positioned himself as the protective brother, nobody would be investigating his business. They'd be focused on your personal tragedy. I hired a forensic accountant named Samantha who specialized in fraud cases. I gave her everything Tyler had provided plus Marcus's laptop files. She worked for 3 days straight. When she called me back, her voice was grim. Your brother wasn't just committing fraud, Samantha explained. He was planning something bigger. There are draft documents on his computer for a joint investment venture with you, Stellan. With me? I never agreed to any investment. Exactly. But he'd prepared everything as if you had. Partnership agreements, merged accounts, shared business entities. If Claire left you, you would have been emotionally devastated. You would have leaned on family. Marcus would have presented this venture as a way to rebuild your life. The pieces clicked into place. He would have merged our finances and buried his fraud under your clean name, Samantha confirmed. You have no criminal record, no business complaints, no red flags. If his crimes were discovered later, he could claim you mismanaged things, or the confusion of merged finances would delay investigations for years. There's more, Samantha said. The life insurance. If he died before the fraud was fully exposed, it would get blamed on business stress after he'd heroically saved his brother. Your family would receive insurance money, and the fraud investigation would close. Stellan wasn't just collateral damage. I was the escape plan. The stress of everything broke us down further. Claire and I were living separately. The investigation into Marcus's death had closed. Everyone in my family still blamed her. One evening, Claire came to my apartment. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes. Her hands shook as she held her coffee. I can't do this anymore, she said quietly. I can't fight your dead brother and your whole family. Everyone thinks I'm the villain. I'm getting hate messages online. Someone vandalized my car. Your aunt called my boss, tried to get me fired. Claire, I love you, Stellan, but I can't spend the rest of my life being the woman who drove your brother to suicide. That's what people believe. That's what they'll always believe. Tears streamed down her face. Maybe we should just accept that this broke us. Maybe Marcus won. I almost let her walk away. almost accepted that his lie would live forever. Then I remembered something my father used to say. The truth is like a seed. It might take time to grow, but it always breaks through eventually. If Marcus's lie could live forever, then the truth could too. No, I said firmly. I'm not letting him destroy you from beyond the grave. I need time to build a case no one can deny. Claire looked at me with exhausted hope. How? By fighting back with nothing but the truth. I stopped trying to convince people with words. Instead, I built evidence like I was preparing for a trial. I hired Kyle full-time as a forensic technology consultant. I kept Samantha working on the financial records. I hired a lawyer named Patricia who specialized in posthumous fraud cases. We're going to document everything as if we were going to court, Patricia told me. Every claim backed by records. Every accusation supported by multiple sources. Just facts that can't be argued, Stellan. We organized everything chronologically. The loan request, the planted doubts, the doorbell footage, the fabricated screenshots, the suicide note drafts, the insurance increase, the post-nuptial attempt, Tyler's testimony, the partnership documents. Every piece fit together. It took 6 weeks. My savings were nearly gone. I stopped sleeping more than 4 hours a night. Claire brought food daily, making sure I didn't collapse. Finally, we had everything compiled. 147 pages of evidence, witness statements, digital forensics, financial analysis, timeline reconstructions, everything cross-referenced and verified. This is bulletproof, Patricia said. Nobody can dismiss this. Then it's time to present it. I asked my parents for a formal meeting about Marcus's estate. They agreed, though my mother made clear she was still furious with me. They arrived at Patricia's office Wednesday morning. My father looked annoyed. My mother's face was puffy from crying. Patricia introduced herself. I'm sorry for your loss, but there are facts about your son's death that Stellan needs you to know. I laid everything on the table. The metadata reports, the IP logs, the insurance changes, the draft suicide notes, Tyler's statement, the audit notices, the partnership documents. What is this? My father asked. Evidence that Marcus fabricated everything, I said quietly. Claire never sent those emails. That bank transfer never happened. My mother shook her head. No, Marcus wouldn't. Read the doorbell footage transcript. Patricia interrupted gently. Your son rehearsed his accusations the night before. He mentioned Stellan by name during his practice run. My father read it. His hands shook. Read the suicide note drafts. I continued. 4 versions over a week. My mother scanned the pages. Her hand went to her mouth. He wrote these before the dinner? I showed them everything. The fraud investigation. How Marcus needed me vulnerable. How Claire's refusal made her an obstacle. My father kept shaking his head, but he couldn't argue with the evidence. Your son moved money between his own accounts to stage the transfer screenshot, Patricia explained, displaying transaction records. He made a transfer to himself, altered the numbers digitally, then reversed it. We have the bank records. The room was silent except for my mother's crying. Patricia continued. The emails were completely fabricated using editing software. Not one exists in any email system. They're pure fiction. He rehearsed the confrontation, as you've seen. He tested the HDMI connection beforehand. And here's what proves premeditation, Patricia said. The suicide note was printed 3 days before Sunday dinner. We recovered the printer logs. My mother looked up, devastated. He printed it before accusing Claire? Yes. Marcus didn't lose control that night. He followed a planned script from beginning to end. Patricia laid out the complete timeline. The loan request Stellan refused. The insurance change. The fabricated evidence. The staged confrontation. The calculated suicide. Every step deliberate. But why? My mother whispered. I pulled out the final document. The audit board's preliminary findings. He was facing criminal fraud charges. He needed a distraction big enough that nobody would look at his company. The audit board's report detailed everything. Marcus's company had been under investigation for 3 months. The state had identified fraud worth over $400,000. He was scheduled for formal interviews the week after his suicide. If the investigation became public, Marcus planned to claim emotional distress, Patricia explained. He'd say saving his brother from a gold digger pushed him to breaking point. The narrative would generate sympathy, possibly delay prosecution. The document included emails between Marcus and his lawyer discussing reputation management and shifting public focus to family crisis. He weaponized family loyalty as insurance, Patricia said. If people saw him as a protective brother in crisis, they'd be less likely to believe fraud allegations. My father looked broken, so everything at that dinner was a lie. Every accusation, every screenshot, all manufactured, I confirmed. And Claire has lived with the aftermath for months, while we blamed her for something she never did. My mother closed her eyes. What have we done? What Marcus planned, Patricia said. You reacted exactly as he predicted. He knew Stellan's family well enough to calculate your every move. The meeting ended with my parents in stunned silence. What happens now? My father asked. Now we make this official. With Patricia's guidance, we submitted all documentation to multiple authorities. The audit board received everything about the fraud. The insurance company received evidence of premeditated suicide for financial gain. The medical examiner received documentation, changing the context of Marcus's death. Everything became official record. Not gossip, not rumors. Documented facts in government files that carried Stellan's name as the reporting party. This ensures the truth is permanent, Patricia explained. It can't be dismissed or rewritten. It's part of the official record. The audit board completed their investigation within 3 weeks. They released preliminary findings publicly. The local newspaper picked it up. Local businessman under investigation dies after staging family confrontation. The insurance company initially refused to pay out, citing fraud and premeditation. Eventually, they settled for a fraction of the original amount, enough to cover funeral costs only. My extended family started reaching out. Relatives who'd sent angry messages suddenly wanted to talk. These things take time, Patricia said. People need to process that someone they loved was capable of this. But I wasn't interested in rushed apologies. I needed something more public. I asked my parents for one final thing. My parents invited the entire extended family to their house on Sunday afternoon, the same location where Marcus had destroyed Claire months before. Everyone who'd heard Marcus's accusations and turned against my wife. Everyone who'd whispered about Claire being responsible. My father spoke first. We need to correct something terrible, something we participated in against Stellan and his wife. My mother was crying. Months ago, Marcus showed us evidence Claire was leaving our son. We believed him. We demanded Claire leave. We blamed her. That evidence was completely fabricated, my father said. Every email, every transfer. Marcus created it all. It was a lie designed to destroy Claire and manipulate Stellan. The room erupted in shocked conversations. We have forensic analysis, expert testimony, Marcus's drafts showing he planned this for weeks, evidence he was under investigation for fraud. My father's voice broke. Our son was not who we thought, and Claire was innocent of everything. My mother turned to Claire. We failed you. We threw you out without listening. We let you be blamed for a man's suicide when you did nothing wrong. We're so sorry. It was public, in front of everyone who judged her. Several relatives started crying. My aunt hugged Claire, sobbing apologies. Over the following weeks, my parents worked to undo the damage. They contacted every person who'd heard Marcus's accusations. They shared the truth with documentation. They posted a public statement on social media. We believed our son's lies. We hurt an innocent woman. We're sorry. The response was overwhelming. People who'd sent Claire hate messages now sent apologies. Her workplace rallied around her. The neighborhood held a fundraiser to repair her vandalized car. My parents donated the small insurance settlement to organizations supporting fraud victims and suicide survivors. Since Marcus tried to use his death to escape consequences, we want to support people hurt by similar deceptions. Every person Marcus had borrowed from was contacted. My parents used their savings to repay what they could. Family gatherings resumed, different now. More honest. Claire was welcomed without hesitation. People greeted her warmly by name and greeted me as Stellan again, without pity in their eyes. My relationship with my parents changed too. We attended family therapy together, working through the betrayal we'd all experienced. Tyler got job offers after his integrity became known. The local business community learned what Marcus had done. His company's assets were liquidated to pay victims. The myth of Marcus, the protective brother, collapsed. The truth replaced it. And I felt something unexpected. Peace. Claire and I had been living separately for months. Even after the truth came out, we needed time to rebuild. We started slowly. Coffee twice a week. Then dinners. Long walks where we talked about everything except the investigation. I'm scared, Claire admitted. I'm scared that what he did broke us too much. He wanted to destroy us, I said. But we're still here. Still trying. That means he failed. We went to couples therapy. We talked about trust and trauma and moving forward. Claire discussed the fear she'd felt being publicly branded a villain. I, Stellan, talked about the guilt of not immediately defending the woman I loved. 3 months after my parents' apology, Claire moved back into our apartment. 6 months later, we renewed our vows. Not in a church with hundreds of people. Just us in our living room with my parents as witnesses. Claire wore a simple dress. I wore the same suit from our original wedding. I promise to believe you even when others don't, I said. I promise to fight for us even when it's easier to walk away, Claire replied. My mother cried. My father smiled for the first time in months. And when I kissed my wife, I felt something Marcus had tried to kill. Hope. Life moved forward in small, steady ways. Claire got a promotion. Her boss apologized for doubting her and gave her a raise. She started sleeping through the night again. I changed careers. Going back to school for teaching felt right. My first class was personal finance, teaching people to spot fraud and manipulation. Students knew me as Mr. Stellan, and I was proud of that name again. My parents volunteered with a support group for families affected by financial crimes. The house where that dinner happened was sold. My parents moved to a smaller place without those memories. Extended family relationships healed. Holiday gatherings resumed. Kyle, who'd helped expose the truth, became a regular part of our lives. He and Claire became close friends. Tyler started his own consulting business, helping companies identify internal fraud. He credited our case with showing him the importance of speaking up. Patricia used our case in presentations about fraud documentation, always referring to me by name as an example of someone who fought back quietly and methodically. And slowly, we rebuilt what Marcus had tried to destroy. Not the same as before, but stronger. Something tested by fire. 2 years after that Sunday dinner, I stood in my classroom teaching financial literacy. We were discussing manipulation in business relationships. A student raised her hand. Is it true that story about the brother who faked evidence was you? Is your name really Stellan? The case had become known in fraud investigation circles. Yes, my name is Stellan, and that was my family. How do you feel about it now? I thought carefully. My brother tried to control the ending of his story. He thought dying would freeze the narrative forever. But truth doesn't freeze. It surfaces. Sometimes slowly, sometimes painfully, but it always comes up. After class, I went home to Claire. She was cooking dinner, humming along to music. She smiled when Stellan walked through the door. That night, we sat on our balcony watching the city. Claire held my hand. Do you think we'll ever fully move past it? Moving past it isn't the goal, I said. We survived it. We exposed the truth. We rebuilt. That's enough. Marcus had staged the final scene carefully, thinking his death would cement his narrative forever. But stories don't end when someone dies. Marcus destroyed my marriage temporarily. He shattered my trust. He manipulated everyone who loved him. But Stellan refused to let his lie define us. My marriage survived. Claire's name was restored. The truth was documented permanently. Marcus wrote his script and executed his plan. But I wrote the ending. And in that ending, truth won.